believe in the ripple effect.
What is up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Brandes, also known as Rick Brands, and a great episode for you today. This is definitely a bucket list type of guest. This is somebody I've been a fan of for a really long time, and it was truly a pleasure to connect and sit down for an hour and chat. Today, joining us is Dr. Naomi Wolf. She's a best-selling author. I'm sure you have run into some of her debates or lectures or interviews on all the biggest shows and platforms all over the world. She has written many great books, some being The Beauty Myth, The End of America, Give Me Liberty, and many others. I'll put links to her website, her social media accounts, and much more in the show description, so please check that out. And of course, before we get into the conversation itself, I have to remind you guys, this is a value for value show. If you get some value out of these conversations, please consider giving some value back. It doesn't have to be financial. If you can't financially support the show, rate the show, review the show, tell people about the show, subscribe to the show on all the platforms I'm on. And as you know, I'm on all the audio platforms and many of the video platforms. But if you can support the show financially, please consider doing so. At the moment, I have a bunch of episodes recorded already that I just need to find time to edit, do the intros, upload, thumbnails, all that type of stuff. But if I was doing this full time with enough people contributing, then I could get these shows out much quicker. So please consider doing so. And the ways you can do it is we have a PayPal account if you want to support us with a one-time donation. We have a Patreon page if you want to support us monthly. And if you do, once a month I do a Patreon podcast with my Patreon supporters, and I release it as a episode. I have music, which is the music you hear in the beginning and at the end of the podcast. It's my solo project called Theory 6, and you can find it anywhere you can find music: Amazon, Spotify, Pandora. You can also find it in the show description, and you can find it on my website. On my website, you can also donate using Ethereum or Bitcoin. I also have a few sponsors, one being Content Safe, who saves me tons of time with uploading videos. What they do is once I upload one of my video episodes, they automatically share that video episode to all the video platforms I'm on, and they also built my website. So if you're a content creator, YouTuber, podcaster, and you're looking for a company to help out with any of these things, definitely check out contentsafe.co. The owner and CEO of the company is Matt Raymer, which you guys might know from being a regular on the Ripple Effect podcast and the Union of the Unwanted. Real quick, a couple other sponsors are the University of Reason, created by Richard Grove, helping people find their purpose, helping people get the most out of their lives, connect with like-minded people, and much more. So if you're at a crossroads in life and you're looking to maybe take a different career path, check out the University of Reason and the very popular autonomy courses. Last sponsor is Element Electrolytes, created by a OG in the health and nutrition community, Rob Wolf, who's been on my show and many other shows like Joe Rogan. And Rob created a electrolyte mix, no sugar, no carbs. You put it in your water. It tastes great. It can help with many symptoms from dehydration like headaches, fatigue, muscle soreness, and many other things that you might not think are related to dehydration but are. And many of your options to hydrate are full of sugar or really cheap ingredients, and this is not the case with Element Electrolytes. So use a link in the show description, and every time you purchase Element Electrolytes using that link in the show description or on my website, because all these ways of supporting the show, including links to my sponsors, are on my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. But every time you use that link for Element Electrolytes, you'll get a free gift. Finally, the intro's over. Enjoy the conversation, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace. But for people listening who maybe aren't as familiar with your work as I am, Do you mind giving, a background and include or exclude as much as you would like, and just give people a little bit of background of your journey and what led you down this path of exploring some of these ideas?
Sure. I grew up in San Francisco in the 60s and 70s, which was a wonderful, idealistic time and place, in which I was very impacted by the LGBTQ rights movement that was nascent, the women's movement. I saw immigrants, especially Chinese and Latin American immigrants, organizing into very effective political um, kind of pressure groups, affecting City Hall. Harvey Milk was in the city council at that time. And it was just a very, what is the word, formative example of how people could make a difference, and bring in, better ideas than the ideas that were existing already. Um, Went to Yale, became a Rhodes Scholar, went to Oxford, and I've written 8 best-selling nonfiction books, usually about women's issues or more recently civil liberties, which I see as they're coextensive. I'm CEO of a tech company called Daily Cloud. Our mission is to make it easier for people to use democracy through digital technology like shareable state and federal legislation that you can send through social media. I have 2 beautiful children, 2 beautiful stepchildren. I married my bodyguard after I got death threats. And I was a political consultant to Clinton's reelection campaign and also to Vice President Gore's presidential campaign. So I think those are pretty much the high points. I think what you are referencing just now probably is the fact that for the last 2 years, I've been speaking up about how the pandemic is being used as a way to undermine our rights and freedoms by a handful of bad actors who are loosely aligned to strip us of our liberties, and under the guise of a public health emergency. And that's the subject of my most recent book, The Bodies of Others, The New Authoritarians, COVID-19, and the War Against the Human, which, even though it's been completely censored by legacy media, it is in the top 15 or 25 on Barnes & Noble for the last 6 weeks or so. And that is pretty much the summary of my work.
Well, marrying your bodyguard's a great business move because you still get the security, but you don't have to pay for it. So that's
Awesome. Absolutely.
So, coming from that type of background, what is your opinion of the modern day movement of, like, gay rights, lesbian rights, trans rights? Like, what's your perspective on what's going on today? And do you agree with a lot of it? Do you disagree with a lot of it?
Well, that's a huge question. I mean, obviously, I agree that everyone should have rights. I think, that's pretty fundamental. And I don't think I'm giving them their rights by believing they should have rights. I do believe, like our founders believed, that our rights are God-given and inalienable, that we were born with human rights. So that is the core of my belief. That said, things have gotten kind of ugly on the left since Biden was elected. It's not, I still obviously support LGBTQ rights. I support women's rights. I support all the rights, but I am very taken aback that what used to be kind of liberal, morally coherent perspectives on race and gender and sexual orientation, like, people should be treated equally, or people should, not be excluded on the basis of their sexual orientation or their gender, or, women should have rights to bodily autonomy. Those, sadly, since Biden was elected, those inclusive and morally coherent positions on the left have really kind of changed and flipped upside down to become very Stalinist, like you have to believe a certain list of things. You're not allowed to ask questions. You have to privilege people of certain ethnicities or sexual orientations or genders rather than treating everyone inclusively and with equal respect. You have to kowtow to what are often seeming to be more and more like extremely kind of unreasoned and unreasoning positions. And overall, just the notion that speech is violence, and that you can do violence to people through having thoughts and speaking, has really infested, what used to be very reasonable, laudable perspectives on the left. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah. Do you think that it's just a little bit of overcorrecting? Like, they're trying to, it's a lot of times it's like you see an issue and then you try to fix it and then you go too far in the other extreme and the solution becomes a new issue. Or do you think, like many of us probably do, that maybe it's, they're just being used as pawns for, a larger agenda?
Yeah, I totally believe the latter. It's not overcorrecting from what I see, because it's not the same thing, right? Overcorrecting is, we have a history of racism in this country. Let's be sure that everyone is treated equally. Let's really, really, really be extra, extra sure everyone's treated equally. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that there's a whole new, hierarchies put in place where people are being treated with racism, depending on their race. That the races have flipped, but it's not egalitarianism, it's racism. Same thing with gender, or sexual orientation. I mean, it's not the same to encourage people not to discriminate against other people on the basis of sexual orientation. That's not the same thing as putting, and I don't think this is coming from the LGBTQ community, which I'll get to in just a minute per your second question, but that's not the same thing as putting completely inappropriate, hyper-sexualized, books and presentations in elementary school, and putting, counselors and mental health professionals in the role of parents to discuss issues of sexual identity. I mean, those are just completely different things. So no, it's not an overcorrection at all. And to your question at the end of your questions, I 1,000% believe that this is not organic. It's not natural. It doesn't feel like American questions, even American discussions. This is 1,000% CCP or originated asymmetrical warfare, designed to divide us and make us stupid and weak so that we can be more easily made war upon and fragmented. The fault lines in our culture being artificially inflated, and nonsensical belief systems are being imposed on us so that we can't think coherently, we can't grasp our history, and we certainly can't unite and protect our most noble ideals, one of the first of all of them being freedom of speech and free exchange of ideas.
Yeah, one thing I used to love about your feminist perspective was kind of you would emphasize that it's like you're not trying to generalize that all men are bad. You're just saying that, there are some bad apples, and those are the ones that we should demonize, and not demonize. We shouldn't generalize anybody. I make the same argument with anytime a police officer is caught or does something that's really bad, that police officer shouldn't represent all police officers, just like the person that maybe they're arresting, if they're not a good person, they shouldn't represent everybody that looks like them. And it's like there's no like logical consistency with people. I mean, it's same thing with like the my body, my choice, but yet there's all this uproar about abortions, and regardless where you stand on that, like personally, if I'm having a conversation with somebody, it's like, okay, well, I respect your opinion, and we might agree or disagree on some things, but if you're really upset about this now, like where was the outrage when you're forcing people to have to get a experimental, a non-FDA, approved, even though, as you've written a lot about the medical world and science world. Being FDA approved doesn't mean anything anyways, but even if we pretend that's the gold standard, we get a non-fully FDA approved product, and you're forcing people to have to get it for something that they might not even be at risk for, and to work, just to pay their bills, to feed their family. And you're making them have to decide one or the other, which is just insane to think this is I mean, if we were reading these articles from China, believable, but like the fact that this was going on in the US, and it's baby steps. I mean, you wrote the book The End of America. I mean, how it's like reading Orwell, 1984. It's like, whoa, well, she predicted the future.
Yeah, sadly. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is that my body, my choice irony that, the left understandably is up in arms with the overturning of Roe by the Supreme Court, but they don't seem to get the fact that they really did this to themselves by going along for 2 years with it's not your body, your choice. It's mandates of what's going to happen to your body by the state. They were completely okay with that, and they didn't see any contradiction or moral incoherence there. And so now to say, oh, wait, bodily autonomy, too little, too late. If you're gonna, I mean, the minute I saw that injections were being mandated, apart from my knowing that it's totally illegal because of the Nuremberg Code and HIPAA, I also, as a feminist, was like, wait, I've believed in my body, my choice since I was 15 years old. But I thought it's like one of those moments in the life of Brian where you race out thinking a whole army is with you, and you turn around and you realize you're completely alone. I thought every feminist would be joining me. Every single person who believed in abortion rights, I was sure they would be like, no, you can't force people to inject themselves with something they don't choose. We all know that, but no, it was crickets. And yeah, you see but it's really painful because, I was watching a clip of a commentator going to Union Square where pro-choice people were having a protest and asking them, do you believe in my body, my choice? And then saying, well, how do you feel about vaccine mandates? And they're all like, of course I believe in my body, my choice. And then, well, that's different. That's public health, or that's different. That's about the community. All this nonsense, which isn't even like scientifically accurate, but they seemed, and I've seen this with my own friends and loved ones on the left, completely unable to process that there's a contradiction there.
Well, the weird thing is, like, I don't feel like my views have changed that much. I just think like the people who were typically on the same side with me have changed. And
Yeah.
because when I've always been very passionate about medical freedom, and I'm a big fan of like using your body as it's your body's the best defense against anything, and really you should look into root extracts and teas and vitamins and minerals, and be proactive and do things to try to, because your body's an amazing machine that is so capable of doing so many things if you give it the right fuel to do it. And so I've always been a part of the non-GMO movement, the anti-Monsanto movement, questioning big pharma. I'm not a fan of big pharma at all, and I've had many doctors throughout the years that have questioned what they're doing and gotten in trouble and by pushing back. And then all of a sudden it's like, and that was a lot of people from the left, people who believed in breastfeeding over formula, people who believed in living a more organic lifestyle. And then all of a sudden it's like, now you think big pharma's the good guys? Like, what do you think happened?
I don't even understand. I mean, in The Bodies of Others, I write about this, that people in my tribe who literally would not shop at Whole Foods, who would not put anything but Burt's Bees on their babies' bottoms, who would never use sunscreen with pabas, raced to get a gene altering, untested, like injection therapy. I don't even know what to call it, especially since I've seen the 55,000, not all of them, but many of the documents from the Pfizer release via court order, since we've got 3,000 experts going through those and writing reports for Daily Clout. But yeah, the same people who knew about thalidomide and who knew about silicone breast implants and who knew about, vaginal mesh and who knew about like the millions of times, the Tuskegee experiments, the millions of times medicine has been wrong or science has been wrong, or pharma, has been wrong about what they're saying is safe and effective. All the things that had to be taken off the market, it's as if their whole knowledge base, my fellow tribes people's whole knowledge base about pharma vanished, and they raced to inject this material into their bodies. And not like, the other thing that freaks me out completely, and I don't have good answers for how this can be, right? Because cognitively it happens so fast and everybody is having the same delusional belief system at the same time, which I've never seen before in my entire life. But they raced to do it, and they say to people like me or the dissident doctors, don't show me your sources, or I don't respect your sources, no matter what the sources are. Like, you can literally show them peer-reviewed studies, and they're like, I don't trust your sources. It's a massive cult. It's a massive hallucination. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, the other thing too is like, I mean, I grew up in an era, I'm 37. I grew up in an era where marijuana was demonized as a gateway drug, the worst thing ever. And now there's, I live in Massachusetts, you can buy weed around every corner. And now they're demonizing tobacco, which was the thing everybody was smoking while they were demonizing weed. And I'm like, they've just reversed roles. I'm like, how do you still believe them? I mean, it's like having that abusive boyfriend. It's like, and saying, oh no, this time he's telling the truth, he's not going to hit me. It's like, no, he keeps lying to you. Like, when are you going to wake up to it? Is it really just a example of the power of propaganda and politics? Because I feel like people disliked Trump so much that anything that seemed like Trump was for, you had to be anti, regardless if it made sense and it went against all your logic and all your values.
Yeah, I mean, you're identifying the right strange spell sources, right? I mean, our people, not to speak for you, but I'll say my people, my former friends and colleagues on the left, the propaganda, is certainly relentless. I mean, I've seen, like, my mom, she lets me use her as an example of a smart person being bombarded with propaganda, and when I haven't been with her for a month or two, and she's been watching NPR or listening to NPR and watching CNN, she's, she believes things that are just categorically not true. And it takes a while, when I'm there to kind of, and she's terrified, right? Because it's nonstop fear porn. Issued in this very authoritative way. But the other sneaky thing this massive wave of propaganda did is it invoked moral belief, moral convictions. So, instead of saying wear a mask, you'll protect yourself, the message is wear a mask, you're protecting the community. It's selfish people who go to parties. It's selfish people who, want to send their kids to school. We selfless people are careful, with the community. So that plays right into, the left. They like nothing more than to think of themselves as better than everyone else, including morally better. And so that just, lodged right in that little kind of narcissism of self-regard that the left, can't resist. But the other thing that happened, you're absolutely right, is that, and it's ridiculous, right? Because these are the same narratives around the world. Not everyone has Trump to hate, in the same way that we do. But the narrative was, it's those red states that are stupid, that are not following the science. It's those Trump lovers who are, raising questions about the vaccines, or who are anti-vaxxers, whatever that means, right? So those of us who are educated, right on, blue state, Biden voters, we have to do the opposite. And that was really pretty stupid. I mean, my mom, I quote her, and again, she gives me permission because she's a therapist, and she's very good at being self-aware, even when she's not self-aware, right? So she, I'm not like going off the, what's the politically correct way to say? I'm not freelancing. When I was on Tucker Carlson, the depth of the pandemic, she was like, oh, that sounds like a super spreader event. Like the assumption on the left is, if you talk to conservatives, they're going to infect you. They're dirty. They're not careful. I heard that word all the time on the left. And I and it's turned into a full blown neurosis. I mean, I literally know people, especially older people, which is especially tragic, who literally haven't left their homes for 2 years now. But I know young, healthy people, with kids who literally don't let their kids have play dates, don't let them go to the park. I know a family member who, when I was borrowing their car, they, it was a rental car. They needed the rental car to sit empty for 48 hours so that, they wouldn't get like whatever was the, cooties crawling on the, steering wheel. I mean, it's just so much psychotic, magical thinking. And I quote people I love in the bodies of others. I have beloved friends. I have a friend who's a judge. I concealed his profession out of respect for him, but I kind of am done with that. He's a judge. He should know better. He literally said to me, I do not sit indoors with unvaccinated people. I've known him for 35 years. This is one of my best friends. Another family member said, I don't sit out of doors with unvaccinated people. And I'll literally never see that person, in this lifetime. So people are crazy. Even now, 2.5 years later, they're crazy. But it's like OCD or any other kind of obsessive compulsive disorder. They can't think their way out of it. And the propaganda created, this mental illness, this OCD. But it's very heartbreaking. I mean, I keep telling my mom, you've got to socialize, you've got to get in the sun. Don't wear a mask, when you're outside, breathe that fresh air. And she's doing really well. But I see her loved, her people the same age as she is, who are isolating. And it's like they're turning into ghosts. I mean, they're white. They're, literally white as ghosts. And they're so isolated. They only see people on Zoom that it's like they're just fading away.
Well, to me, it's like when Pfizer, who has received some of the biggest, fines in pharmaceutical history, it's like when you're trusting them, when they're telling you things like, hey, when you're pregnant, you shouldn't, or when you're breastfeeding, you shouldn't eat sliced meat because of the nitrate. So even that is dangerous, but it's completely okay and you're recommending it or telling women who are having children or want to have kids that it's okay and there's no side. And you can get into that because some of the Pfizer data dump, you've kind of documented exposed some of the stuff that was going on with the trials, right?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you. And it's not just me, but actually, overwhelmingly, it's these 3,000 experts, doctors and RNs, biostatisticians, lab clinicians, medical fraud investigators, research scientists. They have been, we've got a wonderful program director named Amy Kelly, and she's organized them into 6 research groups, and they've produced about 27 reports now, and people can read them on dailyclout.io. But you're absolutely right. In the Pfizer documents, I mean, there's catastrophic harms, right? There's no simpler way to say that. So for quite a while, I've been persuaded that we're not looking at just pharma, a greedy pharmaceutical company. We're looking at an act of war. And I've been saying that publicly for a while without finding the smoking gun. I've since found the smoking guns, and it's in my most recent Substack, which is pinned on Substack and on Getter. It's called Facing the Beast. And essentially, it shows that Pfizer and BioNTech are enmeshed in the production and formulation of the Pfizer vaccines and also the COVID pills and the antigen tests and the PCR tests with the Chinese Communist Party. And so to me, that is exactly what I was looking for. I knew it would be there. But the bottom line is these 1,200 deaths, 4 of them the day of injection, revealed in the Pfizer documents, the harms to the hearts of children, the encephaly, the lung clots, the leg clots, the blood clots, the heart attacks, the strokes, the hemorrhages, all of those are just very obviously there as like, assaults on our population. But very specifically, there's a kind of 360-degree attack on the reproductive cycle. And I got deplatformed over a year ago for being among the first to report on menstrual dysregulation. It's my job for 35 years to report on, women's health issues. This was a clear signal that something was wrong. I promptly didn't just get deplatformed, but smeared by Twitter's spokespeople and, all the legacy media I've been writing for over 40 years. But I can't be over 40, I suppose. I'm 59, but, almost 40. And, but at every stage, whether it's the andrology report of the injection suppressing male sperm counts and sperm motility, to the fact that the spike protein, the lipid nanoparticles, and the mRNA lodge in the ovaries, as well as in the liver and the adrenals and the spleen, whether it's the fact that the lipid nanoparticles traverse the placenta, which, as you were kind of pointing out, pregnant women were assured that it didn't, but of course it does. They were told it couldn't possibly affect the baby. It goes right into the fetal environment, cross, like these lipid nanoparticles are designed to cross the blood-brain barrier. They cross every membrane in the human body. Whether it's the fact that there's a baby die-off, double the number of babies are dying in Scotland as usual. 86 babies died when usually they have 5 or 6 in Ontario, Canada. In Israel, they're a third up for vaccinated women, having spontaneous abortions in one hospital in Haifa. The baby die-off. And then you've got these horrific scenes of breast milk being contaminated with polyethylene glycol, which is a petroleum byproduct. And then you've got, in the Pfizer documents, babies going into seizures, if they're nursing from breastfed mothers, multi-organ system failure in the VAARS database. You've got, 270 women got pregnant in the Pfizer documents, even though they excluded pregnant women, right, and claimed it was safe based on a French study of 44 rats followed for 42 days, run by employees of Pfizer. But nonetheless, they lost 235 or so records, but of the 35 or so pregnant women, 28 of them lost their babies. So there's just catastrophic baby death. These Israeli journalists found in VAERS 56 babies in multi-organ system failure. Babies who are nursing or have failure to thrive. It's an NIH study. They're inconsolable. They're not growing. So it's just 360 degrees. And also, can we please remember? I get so angry about this. Can we please remember 8th grade biology? You need a cycle to get pregnant. Right? You need a cycle, and you need a healthy cycle to get pregnant and, to ovulate properly. And if the average, 42% of women who've been injected with these vaccines are menstruating a day longer than they used to. So that is messing up your fertility. It's just going to mess it up. There's something wrong there. Postmenopausal women bleeding. Like, you don't have to be I'm an English major, and I know that that's a sign of something wrong, right? I mean, obviously, women are, I don't get too gross, but like literally uterine linings are being sloughed, and when you see how this spike protein and lipid nanoparticles and the mRNA harms the vascular structures, right? That all this clotting, right? Well, what is your uterus? It's a it's a bed of blood. I mean, I'm sorry to gross anyone out, but like, this is what we learned in middle school. It's, if you're not pregnant, the blood sheds. If you get pregnant, that is food for the baby, but it's being messed up by these materials that are going into, women's bloodstreams. And not staying in the injection site, which was another lie we were being told by the vaccine manufacturers and the vaccine confidence program. So all of it is disgusting. But what, what's beyond disgusting is that the West got targeted, right? Of the 42,000 adverse events in the Pfizer documents, and that's really cases, right? So it's more like 150,000 adverse events because people had multiple things go wrong. Over 35,000 of them happened, over 34,000 happened in the United States. The next biggest group was Western Europe, notably Britain, Germany, France, and then, Italy, Portugal, Spain, Greece. And I don't have to tell you how significant that is. And then of all the other 56 countries where these vaccines were rolled out, the adverse events total only 7,000 for the final group. So that's an attack on the West. That's not random. And when you see that Fosun Pharmaceuticals out of Shanghai is the partner with BioNTech in producing these vaccines, and you understand that, the CCP wants our land, they want our water, they want our food supply, they don't want our population. You have a massive attack on the West. That's what these are.
Yeah, and the concern is it's baby steps in that direction, where it's same thing with 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It's small baby steps, and by the time you realize it, you've given up so many freedoms and rights. And then what they do is they give you a little bit back, and you're supposed to be excited about it. And Hotep Jesus has been on this show, and I keep repeating this because I remember we were talking about this, and he's like, if I give you 50 feet of chain, are you free? If I give you 100 feet of chain, are you free? He was making the point that it's like they keep giving you some freedoms back, but you're still on a chain. You should be upset that you're on a chain at all. And it also shows, because I thought, prior to 2020, that most people got their news from the internet, and that the TV media didn't have a lot of pull. But it shows that there's still people like your mother, my family members, people that are a little older, who still grew up in a world where the doctor is always concerned about you, and the best medical advice and information will come from a doctor, not from somebody like us talking online, and that the media is about showing you news, not selling you news. And the truth is, these are all for-profit industries, and it was a completely media made hysteria. I mean, I kept telling people, I'm like, look around, are we in some type of epidemic? Do you see dead bodies all over this? And so it's like, if you turn off the TV, it's like that saying, if you don't watch news, you're uninformed. If you do watch news, you're misinformed. And it's like, you're better off just turning it off, because if you just if your opinions came from just what you were seeing and what people you knew were talking about, nobody was experiencing what they said we're going to experience. And that's why Florida did so well, because DeSantis, he talked about how he shut down for a week or two or whatever it was, and he was waiting for the onslaught of hospitals filling, like they said, the experts said that it was going to happen. And then when it didn't happen, he's like, how long am I going to wait around for? Let's open up. And then when Florida is fine, nobody talks about it. While in Massachusetts, people are still freaking out. I'm like, you do know that Florida's wide open, and you go to, and I went down there quite a few times, and I'm like, everybody's happy and psychologically normal. You could feel the tension when you come back to a blue state like Massachusetts. Like, you couldn't quantify, you couldn't quite explain it, but it's almost like the second you get off the plane, like there's this, and I believe in positive and negative energy, and not to get it all supernatural or whatever, but I definitely feel like there's more to humans, and we understand, we sense things, we feel things, and and just living in a blue state, you could sense the anxiety, you could sense, and then you go to a red state and it's like, oh my God, like I just immediately felt happier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's how I felt when I went to South Dakota, last year. From a blue state, it felt like America. People were not traumatized, and they weren't mentally ill, and you kind of realized what it must have been like coming from Russia or coming from, Vietnam, or, some not free country, and coming through Ellis Island and being in New York, back in the day, when we were free, and looking around and going, oh my God, freedom, this country is free. I don't feel that way in New York anymore. It's not free. We're under emergency law here. But I know when I go to Florida, or when I go to especially South Dakota, because they never shut down even once, I remember what America used to feel like, all these people being in a state of freedom. And we have absolutely lost that. You're right. And I don't just think, I do think it's what your friend is describing, that we know that the chain could, jerk us, into our homes, or jerk our assets away from us at any time again. But also it is that trauma, that mental illness of, am I going to have to put this on my face in order to be allowed to work? Am I going to have to, keep my child home? What are they going to do to him? What am I, who am I going to have to fight to keep my stepson from being double masked, which is literally what his school threatened kids with if they couldn't wear their masks properly. It's just this constant fight or flight, because we're not being left alone, right?
But your mother, she must understand or be concerned about the psychological damage, right? Because she's aware that all this anxiety, and I mean, the kids are sensing that. It's no different like when, I knew this guy who, his baby was always crying, and then him and his baby's mama separated, and the baby stopped crying, and it's like it hit him that the baby could feel the tension, and even though he thought that they were doing a good job of, like, keeping it from the child. Kids pick up on social cues. You can't hide it from them. They pick. So isn't your mother concerned about, and knowing, being knowledgeable in the field, like concerned about the long-term effects of the way we're dealing with all this?
That's interesting. I think she's persuaded by having read my book, and she's persuaded by the fact that, my husband and I are not vaccinated, but we do other things to keep our immunities up. And of all our family, we're the only ones who didn't get sick, and or didn't get very sick. And she's now persuaded. She's certainly persuaded of the damage that vaccines can cause, right? But it's tough to like, I don't think she advises her, sister or brother to go socialize, right? Because she's explained it to me, that's their belief matrix, that it is so dangerous, and that anything is better than dying of COVID and being ventilated, and that if you just go outside and hang out with someone, you can kill yourself or kill someone else. And so I don't push her, and I think there's also, she lives in Corvallis, Oregon, which is like the belly of the beast, just like certain parts of New York are the belly of the beast. There's also like such social conformity, that, I mean, I was shocked that their synagogue said you have to be not just vaxxed, double vaxxed, and boosted, and wear a mask to go to synagogue. And I'm like, I can't go to synagogue. I can't go to synagogue. No, you can't go to synagogue. So to me, you know, you, with my Jewish lineage, you're supposed to stand up for people who are about to be excluded. You don't go along with nonsense, and you say, I'm going to bring my relative to synagogue. She's not vaccinated. She's not boosted, but this is ridiculous, and she's going to sit with us. But that's such a scandal in this community. It would be so socially disruptive, that my mom would be ostracized, my brother would be ostracized, he might face professional blowback, she might face social blowback. And we saw that happen, right? We saw people I got ejected, get ejected from their social networks, get ejected from their positions of authority, lose professional opportunities. And people are really, really scared of that. So I would ordinarily, with every other thing, like, what, you're not going to let, Black people go inside, who would tolerate that, right? You'd stand up against that. But this was so disruptive and such a consensus reality that I had two choices. I could give my loved ones a really hard time and, do the right thing and insist on going and put them in a difficult position, or just say, okay, I think this is ridiculous and wrong, but I'm not going to force you to, stand up for me and my right to sit next to you in your synagogue. I'm embarrassed to say I chose the latter. Same thing with I'm sorry for my language, but, Chez Panisse, one of the greatest restaurants, in the most right-on city in America, in Berkeley, California. We were in Berkeley for a family vacation. I wanted to go to Chez Panisse. I'd never been. Alice Waters knows me and invited me specifically years ago to go to Chez Panisse and, say hi to her. And we all went to celebrate my mom's birthday. Well, literally there was a maitre d' saying, "Vaccine paperwork, please," in this French accent, and I literally could not go indoors to Chez Panisse. So, do I make a scene? Do I have a sit-in? I've made a lot of other scenes. It wasn't the time or place. I mean, I'll write a public letter. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, except to say that my mom knows better. She knows it's discriminatory, but we're just facing such consensus reality with so many miserable social penalties that I'm not going to force her to, sit at the lunch counter with me. And I even, choose my battles about where I'm going to, whose lunch counter I'm going to sit at.
Yeah, so many people they just thought that if they got the vaccine, they could get their life back. And what you did, you traumatized the whole world. And then you said, hey, you want your life back? You want your social life back? You want to pursue your passion projects? You want to go out to eat with your friends, your family, your whoever? You want your kids not to wear a mask? All you got to do is get vaccinated. So everybody was just thought that was they couldn't see the big picture of like, okay, it's this, then it's another. I mean, what are we on, like the fourth or fifth booster? It's insanity. And
yeah, my husband's an investigator, and he found the CDC document that shows there are going to be 6. And it's an experiment, but it's an experiment on how like at the top of my Substack, there's this image of all these rat autopsies, and their hearts are enlarged. And this is from a study of August 2021 in Hong Kong. So it was overseen by the Chinese Communist Party. And basically it shows that the first injection causes a little bit of damage, and the second injection causes your heart, the rat's hearts to enlarge, visible white spots appear on the hearts, and also cytokine storms and liver damage. It's right there. So every booster is adding poison to your system. It's a slow way to kill and disable people. And you're exactly right. Like, I could see that if you cross that boundary once, why would they ever stop, right? Like, it's the princess and the pea. Like, why would they ever stop saying, well, just a little bit more, just a little bit more? You'd have to be stupid to not realize that if they can get a whole population to inject one thing, why would they not just keep injecting them? but I don't know why, I wasn't joined in my insight by all the other smart people on the left who should have been able to see it a million miles away.
Yeah,
Why would people? It's insane.
it is, and something you've been interviewed on a lot of what some people would say is like right media or alt right media or whatever you want to call it. And I remember when I had Dr. Robert Malone on when I was still on YouTube, because I got kicked off YouTube, but like many of the people who are truth seekers, they were getting banned and censored all over the place. But when I had Dr. Robert Malone on, I remember talking to him about this, and he's like, I'm not right wing. He's like, I'm a scientist. He's like, the
Right.
reason why I'm interviewed on all the right wing shows is because they're the only ones who will talk to me. He's like, see, I'll go. He's like, I'll go anywhere and talk to anybody. And a lot of these scientists, they aren't political. They haven't been studying history or politics or culture. They've been studying science, and they've been, and all of a sudden there's scientists that are just stating their opinions, and they're getting censored all over the place, which again, it made people think like, okay, this wasn't a right or left thing. Like if anybody went against the elite, it didn't matter what your ideology was, you're going to be censored. Jimmy Dore, for just sharing his adverse reactions, was getting, people tweeting at him and saying he was an awful person and all, just for sure. And what happens is, and then people start self-censoring. And that's why even when I was on YouTube and I was getting in trouble, I'm like, you know what? I don't care, because I'm not going to self-censor. I'm like, when they kick me off, they kick me off. I'll go on other platforms, but I can't self-censor because I can't play this game. And I didn't like, I started the show, I called it the ripple effect, because I truly believe that we can all start a ripple. And if I'm self-censoring, then, I'm not helping spread these what I think thought-provoking conversations.
What's the point of having a conversation at all if you're censoring yourself? Yeah, no, I agree with Dr. Malone. Like I haven't changed, but, literally none of the news outlets that asked me to write for them for the last 40 years are covering my book, though it's a bestseller, are covering, the Pfizer documents, even though it's the biggest story of the 21st century and the best reporting I've ever done in my career. And when they notice me, it's to engage in reputational attacks. And these are people I've worked with for, decades. People who are eager to have me on, or eager to, have me be a columnist. It's bizarre. And so it is surprising to me that I, talk to mostly libertarian or I guess alt-right outlets, but I feel the way Dr. Malone does. I'll talk to anyone. I'll talk to anyone about the Constitution. And these are people calling me. It makes no sense at all. But, kind of thank God for conservatives right now, because they are keeping the flame of America alive at a time when, the left has just flushed all their rights and critical thinking down the toilet. That said, it's just in this country that it's the left being in lockstep. These scripts are global, as I point out in my book. And it's a conservative in Britain when it was Boris Johnson, who's a conservative in Australia when it was Scott Morrison. It's a liberal in Canada with Trudeau. This transcends left and right. I'm so sorry, but it's now 3.
We went a little over. Sorry for keeping you up. Thank you so much for your courage. I can't thank you enough for being outspoken and doing what I think we both believe is right, and that's stating the facts. And thanks so much for the time. Hopefully we reconnect again. I'll put links to your book and all your websites and all your social media accounts in the show description, and we'll hopefully talk soon.
I would love that. Thank you. And if you would add that Substack about China, it's big news. Thank you so much for having me, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Take care.